Hey everybody, what's up? How you doing today? I'm so excited to be here with my friend Mario from ESQ Go, and we are talking legal stuff. But wait, before you just turn off the live stream and ignore us, we have exciting things to talk about today. We are going to touch on account reinstatements. Hey, wait, that's boring too. No, we are going to touch on foreigners infringing on your intellectual property rights and what you can do about it. Well, that's a little bit more exciting, right? So, welcome, Mario. I met you through one of my clients who you actually helped. He did not have a patent, his patent was not approved yet. And he had a ton of knockoffs because his product was super viral. And you went after all of his infringers and you actually got them taken down. He dealt with copycats forever. And not only did you get them taken down through your special program, he actually earns money when you take his infringers down, which I thought was so cool. It's been a great experience for him. I was so happy as a business coach seeing that his knockoffs were gone. So, I'm so happy to know you and so happy to introduce you to the community because what you do is so important. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mario, and tell us a little bit more about you and your background.
Thank you so much, Amy. Pleasure being here. Thanks again. So my background, I started selling on Amazon actually when I was in law school. Back when everyone else in law school was getting a job and doing all that, I was like, I don't really want to work, right? So I came across a YouTube video, was it Daniel Moran, I think, right? And it didn't seem real. It seemed like a scam, right? Back then, I mean, FBA and PL, everything was so new, but that's what I did. That's how I got into Amazon selling. So built two brands, sold them, and then at that juncture, I was getting married, so it was time for marriage, for honeymoon, and all of that. I was like, and I was already an attorney. I'd passed the bar and everything. So I was like, you know what? Is there an intersection between Amazon and sort of law, maybe IP law? And that's what happened 5, 6 years ago, and that was the birth of ESCO. But my experience has been again on the Amazon side, also attorney side. Our law firm again helps with reinstatements, as you said, boring because it's sort of
It's like
you know
part of the
it's
deal.
part of business, right? But our thing with ESCO is always coming up with creative yet logical solutions, right? That's sort of in our mission because I feel like in the e-commerce world, things are always changing, and that presents so much opportunity for attorneys to come up with these creative yet logical solutions, right? So while we do ASIN reinstatement, account reinstatement, arbitration, AAA arbitration, all of that, we're always looking for new ways to help clients, right? Help out the Amazon selling community. And one of the main things that complaints that we would get all the time is, Mario, I've got this issue with infringers. I've got a trademark or a copyright or a patent, and I've got these infringers, but there's nothing we could do about it because they're out of the country. They're outside the United States. And back then, we would tell them, like, sending a cease and desist letter to them, I, it's not effective at all, right? Because what are we going to do with them? So what? They get a cease and desist letter. Most of the foreign infringers and sellers, they already know. Just throw it away, right? So one thing that we did create, staying true to our sort of mission of providing creative yet logical legal solutions, last year in 2023, we came up with a new program where we'll take on IP cases. So if you have 25 or more foreign infringers, Amy, we'll take on that case on contingency, saying, you know what, we don't want a penny out of your pocket. We'll go ahead and fund the entire thing, but we'll go ahead and take care of it. We'll permanently remove these infringers and we'll have them pay you a royalty for the infringement, right? So on average, we're looking at getting 50 and more infringers. I think the lowest we've done is 50, but usually it's a couple hundred infringers. And usually
Wow.
sellers walk away with 6 figures, right? Obviously not guaranteed, but that's what we aim for because that's what we need to do because we get a portion of that, right? So the more you get as a client, the more we receive. So obviously our interests are completely aligned. But that's one thing that we started doing, and we've been calling that IPX, and it's made a world of difference.
So
It's
can
made
we get in
a
the
world.
weeds on that? Like, you know, how do you, obviously you have legal ways to do this, but if you don't have a patent, like if you're patent pending and maybe you have a trademark, and you have these copycats, right? Like my client who found you. Um, are you just sending them scary letters? How are,
No.
how does
No,
that
no,
work?
it's no, yeah, no, it's a lot more aggressive than that. It's a lot more aggressive. And this is sort of like for widespread infringement, like I said, right? Minimum, we're looking at 25, but most of them have hundreds of infringers, Amy. So these are people that are really hurting. They came up with an idea or they built a brand and now they've got infringers from everywhere. We don't go after US sellers. This program isn't for them, but it's more for foreign sellers. But what we would do before is if someone came to us and said, you know what, I want to hire you guys to sue, their legal bill would be six figures. They'd probably be looking at $250,000, if not more, for the entire lawsuit. But
Yeah.
what we do is we had to actually create our own proprietary software to manage all these defendants, right? But the first step is number one, identifying that this is a valid IP, so valid trademark, copyright, or patent. But from there, our team goes in and is going to start collecting all the evidence. So screenshots, any product test orders we have to do, identifying who the sellers are, right? So once we collect all the data, we'll go ahead and sue them in one of three jurisdictions, either Florida, Texas, or Illinois, right? Those are the three places where judges are the friendliest to this legal strategy. But we'll go ahead and sue them and get a TRO. So once we get the TRO is temporary restraining order. And the entire argument is these people are foreign. If we don't freeze their accounts that they have at Amazon, at Walmart, at eBay, Etsy, DHgate, Temu, wherever they may be, then these people could just take their money and run, which obviously is the truth. They can just withdraw their money and leave, right? So we'll go ahead and freeze the funds that they have within the marketplace. Whatever money that they have will be frozen, and we'll also go ahead and get that listing, the infringing listing suspended, right? So now they can continue selling, but all the money that they earn will be frozen. So at that point, they have a few choices, defendants. They could either come to us and negotiate, or they could try to fight it, right? But from there, we'll go ahead and have a settlement agreement drawn up and then have them pay whatever royalties that they own. From there, sign the agreement, client gets the agreement, client gets a portion of the funds that we've collected as royalty, and everyone's happy.
Very good. And I'm
Yeah.
guessing once they know that that could happen to them again, they could have all of their funds frozen. Then they're going, I'm staying away from that product.
Exactly. So one thing we've seen, Amy, is once we go after the defendant, 99.9% of the time, they're not coming back, right? Once you hurt someone's wallet, they're not coming back. But what we also may see is there's now a void in the marketplace, right? For example, if I've got a patent on this pen and there's 3,000 sellers and we get rid of all of them, and now I'm the only one selling, number one, my revenue shoots up because all the traffic's coming to me on Amazon and every other marketplace. But other people that are looking at product and doing product research, they're like, hold on, there's one seller selling all this, and there's this much traffic, there's this much search for this one product. I'm going to jump in. And most of these people, they're not going to do a patent search to see does this product have a patent or any copyright and trademark, whatever it may be. So they're not going to do their due diligence, and they'll step in. And we see the market sort of fill up again, not to the same scope that it was before, but we'll see additional infringers come in. So most of these cases will have additional lawsuits that we bring. So it'll be like lawsuit number one, lawsuit number two, lawsuit number three with different additional infringers. So we do see that all the time too.
Got it. Got it.
But
So
those
I
people aren't
think
coming back. Yeah.
I think the question that a lot of people have is what constitutes valid IP, right? So let's say that I'm patent pending, which a lot of people are. They get stuck in this patent pending thing where, they get all these knockoffs and they are not, their patent's not approved yet. Sometimes, mine took 3 years to get
Yeah.
approved.
Yeah.
So what other IP is considered valid, and what should sellers be thinking about even when they're going in to protect their businesses with IP, especially if they're just going to be patent pending for a while?
Yeah. So you bring up a few good points, right? Number one, with patents, it has to be granted. So patent pending, it hasn't been granted yet, so you really don't have those rights. There's nothing we could do there, right? With the client that you're referring to, I don't know exactly who it is. I think we've talked about him or her before, but I can't remember who it is, but I can guarantee you they had a valid granted patent, right? Actually, now that I think about it, I do know who it is. They do have a granted patent, right? Maybe they've got additional ones that are pending right now, but in order for us to use this legal strategy, they need to have one granted. But for patents, what we'll look at is if there's any prior art, right? Meaning if I've got a patent for this, is there anything that the defense side can bring up? And this is part of our legal research that we do before we even file the lawsuit. So we're trying to anticipate what defenses the other side is going to come up with. So that's what we do for patents. And patents is going to be the most complicated. But with respect to trademarks and copyrights, they're usually a lot more straightforward. If you've got a USPTO trademark registration, 99.9% of the time you're good, right?
But in that case, wouldn't it be if you're patent pending and you're getting product knockoffs, most of the time it's people copying your product and they're putting their own label on it.
Correct. Correct.
So
So
then
they, sorry, go ahead.
well, then your trademark wouldn't help you in that case, right? Because
No, no.
yeah, so you have to have the patent already approved, good to go. Otherwise, if it's not granted, if you're just patent pending, you really are stuck. So are there any strategies? I know I've heard sometimes people should do design patents if they're waiting on utility patents, because a utility patent can take a long time. And in the meantime, a design patent can get approved much faster and might at least provide some protection. What do you see in your practice in terms of the best strategies for people when they are waiting out that patent?
Yeah, so number one, I mean, if we're looking at the strategy of, again, I'm not a patent attorney, but this is just sort of general information. But if we've got a utility patent for a clicking pen, a design patent is only going to protect the ornamental appearance of it, right? So it's not really going to protect this. So while that strategy can be very effective, it's not applicable to every situation and every product, right? But one thing they could do is start putting people on notice. Easiest way, patent pending on your Amazon listing. Other than that, you don't have the rights yet, and there is going to be this sort of area or this sort of time frame where you're going to be just have to deal with it, unfortunately, right? But once it is granted, then we could get to work. But there's no reason why if someone has a lot of infringers and they have a patent pending, they can still start collecting all the evidence and say, okay, this ASIN's infringing, that ASIN's infringing, right? While they're anticipating for the granting of their patent. So they could still do that, but otherwise I don't have a great solution for a patent pending.
I think the best thing to do is, like you mentioned, you're not a patent attorney. There's many different strategies. It's product specific. So as people are working through their patents and working through their IP, they should be talking to their attorneys about strategies. I did that with my attorney. I was like, okay, I've got, at least another year, it looks like, of waiting this thing out. What else can we do for this particular product that might provide me some protection in the meantime? And we talk through, timelines, pros, cons. That's probably the best solution there. So what are you seeing right now in, the Amazon, especially the Amazon marketplace, is really growing. I know Amazon's going back after, they're trying to woo back their Chinese sellers that they previously banned from the platform, trying to woo them back. So what are you seeing right now that's going on in terms of infringements, in terms of just across the board that sellers might want to be aware of and proactive about?
Yeah, so fortunately or unfortunately, not much has changed, right? E-commerce, we all know, moves at lightning speed, but we still see infringers, Maybe they're getting a lot more complicated, and I'll explain that in a second too. But we still see infringers. So if you've got a product, one of the things I always recommend is each one of these sort of branches of IP protects an additional layer of protection around your brand or product, right? Trademark is going to protect your brand name or your logo or your slogan. Copyright is going to, in the Amazon world, in the e-commerce world, it's going to protect your product photos, right? And super cheap to get, super easy to get. So add that additional copyright layer of protection. And then patent is going to be the next level that's going to provide a layer of protection against your product, right? Not your brand, but your product. So the more you could have, the better. Like even us, like we've got probably half a dozen trademarks, right? And with the software that we're building, we're going to be looking at patents and copyrights for that too. So it's like we have to do what we tell others to do. But that's one thing. But going back to your question, what we're seeing, here's what I mean with the sophistication of these infringers. I mentioned earlier that with this strategy, we only go after foreign sellers, right? So that may be a cause of it, them realizing that, okay, these attorneys are only going after foreign sellers. But a second thing is also the Inform Act, which I'm not going to get into, but that I think caused a lot of these foreign sellers to register businesses or at least have addresses here in the United States. So we had to change our approach and how we approach these or how we identify who's a foreign seller and who's not, because someone may be in Asia or maybe in China, India, and they have an address here in Arizona, right? So we had to change our process, and now we've got additional ways of knowing whether they're actually located here in the United States or over there, so we can pursue them. But we just see that, but infringements aren't going to go away. I don't care what you have. And even having any type of IP, that just gives you the license. It doesn't mean that it's going to guarantee that there aren't any infringers, right? Or you could stop them all.
And do
Because
you guys cover other marketplaces besides Amazon?
yeah, so we do Amazon, eBay, Walmart.com, Temu, which is a big one.
Yeah.
Wish, yeah, Temu. Maybe
Yeah,
that's what
let's
we'll talk
talk
about.
about Timu. Oh my God,
Yeah, yeah,
it's like the elephant in the room. I feel like when it comes to e-commerce right now, I buy some things on Timu, and I've
same
had
here.
people comment like, "Amy, I'm surprised you're pushing Timu." I'm like, I'm not pushing anything. I'm just shopping like every
Yeah,
other
yeah.
consumer. But I did hear that there was a couple of articles that came out that there was a ton of copycats on Temu. Basically, what they're doing is taking Amazon's best-selling listings and they're literally just copy pasting the photos, everything over to Temu, and then they're just sourcing and selling, right? And drop shipping from China. And so sure enough, I went and checked. And of course, my product is made in the USA, so I don't have as much of an issue with that. But there was a lot of copy paste listings from
Yeah.
Amazon to Temu. And I heard that it was very, very hard, that Temu was very unresponsive in any reports and anybody trying to take these sellers down that were doing this infringement. So what do you think?
So when we started this new line of service, IPX, Temu wasn't, or at least we weren't aware of Temu in January of 2023, right? And then I forgot who mentioned it, might have been a client. And then I was like, Temu, what the heck is that? And then I'm like, okay, let me start ordering. So I ordered my kids some toys from there. And I was like, okay, I definitely see the value here. And then I started receiving complaints about I've got infringers on Temu. I'm like, okay. So we had to add Temu as a marketplace that we sort of monitor and enforce against, right? So one of the other marketplaces, or a couple of the other marketplaces we go after, is Alibaba and AliExpress. Alibaba, AliExpress, they're a pain to deal with, even on the attorney side, like lawsuit side, right? They make it so difficult, and we really don't have much jurisdiction over them because they're based out of Asia. But Temu has headquarters in Boston, right?
Hmm.
And they are one of the most cooperative and easiest to deal with marketplaces whenever we have a lawsuit. They're timely.
Oh.
I would say first is probably Amazon. Amazon's really good. Then it's Temu. Then the rest of them. But we've got we're very fortunate about how responsive and how cooperative they've been about enforcing IP and freezing the accounts. Yeah, so that's been our experience, right?
Well, that's great news. I
Yeah,
mean, because I think some people, just based on the rumors that were going around, were feeling pretty defeated and a little bit fearful of, the consequences of some of these other kind of really aggressive marketplaces popping up. Even TikTok Shop now, you're seeing the ability for people to list not their own products, right? You can list other people's products, and we've done some interesting testing with TikTok Shop.
I saw
And
your post. Yeah,
yeah, so it's really interesting to see that people are starting to use TikTok like a search engine, just like Amazon. And we're going to dig into that more on our webinar that's coming up on January 25th. But it's really interesting seeing these emerging marketplaces and what is going on in general across the board. So that's incredible. Do you have any crazy stories you want to share with us? Any crazy example success stories you want to share?
I can tell you about one of the success stories we had with one of our clients with one of our IPX clients. So he was selling something very basic, and he took this silicone product over to Asia to a supplier and said, "This is the product I want to make. I'm not going to tell you guys what the product is." And the Asian marketplace, or the supplier, I should say, said, "Okay, we can make it." And then he said, "I also want to get a patent on it, this, that." And they said, "You can't get a patent on this, right?" So, okay, client checks in with an attorney here in the US, and attorney says, "Of course you can." So he gets a patent. Now, we're going after infringers, and during our due diligence, we find that, hold on, there's a supplier out of China that has two patents on this product. So we bring it up to the client, and the client's like, "It's my supplier." So the supplier tells the client that you can't get a patent on this. Meanwhile, they're on the phone to their attorney here in the US saying, "Get a patent on this," right? Same exact product. They didn't invent it. They got talk about stealing, right? There's nothing else you could
Mhm.
call it besides stealing. So that's one thing that we had to address. And thank God our client didn't have an NNN, but he did have messages and emails back and forth that we could use to prove. So when the time came to sue them, that's the evidence that we already had ready to go. But be careful dealing with suppliers over there. Make sure that your T's are crossed, I's are dotted, and get an NNN signed, right? Before you
And
get.
get it in and then checked by your attorney. Like my
Well, it
attorney
should be
checked.
drafted. It should be drafted by your attorney.
Yep.
But that's
I
one
have
thing, and
him draft it, and then I have him check the signature, because in China
exactly.
it has to be
Yeah.
signed by their red stamp, right?
Yep. Yep.
Their company. And every single time, even, and it's not necessarily that supplier trying to be nefarious or anything like that. It's just a lot of people don't get NNNs and they
Exactly.
don't know necessarily how to sign them. So they'll just sign them with their import export company or whatever, and that's not going to hold up in China.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I actually went through a lawsuit with one of my
Oh,
suppliers and in China, and that was a crazy situation, but I'm so grateful that I had the right contracts in place, because there's no way, that supplier basically ghosted me.
yeah.
First they remade the product then failed inspection, and then they just ghosted me. And so had I not had that contract and I was able to send them a message from the court in China. And then suddenly they messaged me and said, "Oh, I got
Yeah.
a message." I was like, "Oh, yes, you did, didn't you?"
Yeah.
And it's like, "Oh, you're going to ignore me until now, right?" So, luckily we were able to settle out of court, but it took a really long time. But at the end of the day, I recovered at least the funds that I invested. And had I
Sure.
not had that, I would have just been out, 5 figures for a new
Absolutely.
product. Not only was I out sales waiting for this product to be made, but I was also out the production costs and everything, and shipping costs, because we shipped them and all the units were unsellable. So
And the time that you had to invest, it's not fun. The emotional energy, the time you
mhm.
invest into it, lawsuits aren't fun,
I
right?
actually had to fly to California just to go to the Chinese consulate to get legal paperwork signed.
Yeah,
It's like,
look,
you just You don't imagine that. So why don't you guys go after US sellers? You mentioned you only go after foreign infringers. Why is that?
So with US sellers, we can go after them, but it has to make sense, and we really have to have a lot more proof, right? But we can go after US sellers. But with this strategy, it's focused more on foreign sellers because that's where we see most of it. If they're in the US, usually a cease and desist letter from an attorney does the job because US sellers and I think US population just in general has a better idea of IP, and you can't steal someone else's idea and all of that, right? I don't think that's the same in other countries. So here it's usually a cease and desist, and we could take care of it. But if it's something egregious, then we could definitely do it too here in the US, but it would be a different strategy. It wouldn't be under this under IPX.
Interesting. And of the foreign infringers, you were talking about, of course, we all know China. But are there any others, that you've dealt with, any other foreign countries that are, anywhere near China's infringement level? Is there anyone else infringing, other countries that you've dealt with?
So other countries, yes, a lot of other countries that are at the same level of China, no. I don't think anyone comes close. And maybe I'm biased, maybe the products or the clients that we're getting, that's where the infringers are. But based on my experience and what I've seen, Amy, it's 90% China.
Wow.
You,
Wow.
you 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 can't even sugarcoat that yet.
Amazing. Well, very
Yeah.
good. So you mentioned you started selling on Amazon in law school, and then you sold your businesses. You sold your brands that you were selling on
Yeah.
Amazon. And now you're just a lawyer, right? But it's cool that
Just a
you have that
lawyer.
background.
Yeah, just a lawyer, and I think what really helps me connect with the clients is I've got that business background too, and obviously Esco's my business, and that's where my true passion is. This is just how I support and help out the seller community.
Well, if you have a piece of advice for sellers that are just getting into the game now,
Yeah,
today, right? If you had to give them some business advice of like, hey, you're setting up your brand, you're developing your products, what would your best piece of advice be in today's environment?
it's not going to be legal advice, but I'll give you business advice. So I think being in e-commerce, it's constantly changing. I think if you were selling 10 years ago, 8 years ago, it was a lot different than what it is today. And I think the rate of speed has increased too, right? I think back then we sort of had it easy. We could just do a Me Too product and get away with it and still be successful, right? That's what I did. But nowadays, I don't think you can. Now I think you need to invest money and time into your brand, right? Into your products and have a patent if you can. But this is what I call like private label 2.0, where it's like you need to bring more innovation to the product, to the brand than just here's another Me Too product, right? I think those are the people that are gonna succeed. So if anyone's starting out, I would say start now with that innovative product. Maybe it's not your first product. Maybe the first product you just want to do a Me Too product just to get the experience there in place. But you want that's what the objective should be. That's what the goal should be, is come up with a new product. And if you're thinking, you know what, I'm not a creative type, Amy, I can't come up with a new product, go look at patents to purchase. There you could purchase patents, right? And maybe that's what you do. If you're not the creative type, but you've got the money, maybe that's what you do. Maybe you partner with them. But that would be my suggestion. I see a lot of sellers, and the ones that are more successful are the ones that actually have their own product, have their innovative product, right? And when we say innovative, it's not like we're talking about building a new way to drive a car or something like that. It could be something as simple as how do I make this pen more comfortable for the user, right? So it could be something as simple. The client that I brought up, who the Chinese supplier tried to steal their patent, his is such a super simple product, Amy. I could tell you offline, but such a super simple product where if they brought that to me, I'd be like, I don't want that patent, right? So I've learned from my mistakes, and now I say, you know what? Test it out. You don't know. So don't listen to your attorney for any advice when you say, you know what do you think about this proper? What do you think about this product? If the attorney's been around the block long enough, he'll tell you, you know what, test it. And that's where I stand now is test it because that product super simple, pennies to make, and he walked away. I think so far we've probably collected close to $500,000 in royalties of
Wow.
stolen royalties. Yeah.
Wow.
So that would be my advice.
Amazing. I love it. I think that it's on point. I agree. I always tell people I have nothing against white labeling. I have nothing against, whatever business model you choose. If you want to resell, you want to white label, whatever. I was like, as long as you're making money, I
Mhm.
don't care, right? Like, but if you want longevity, then actually putting some thought into your product and making something that you can truly protect. It doesn't mean you have to invent from scratch, like you were
Yeah.
saying, something you can truly protect is really going to build a moat around your business. And not only that, but I would say adding on to your advice is test the market, but also make sure that whatever you're doing with that product, whatever you're innovating on, adds value for the consumer.
Yep.
Because a lot of times I see people, they'll, change up a product in a way that doesn't really matter to the consumer. And then, they're like, well, I'm not getting any sales, but I
Yeah.
innovated.
Yeah.
So if you have to convince people to buy it and they don't get it, then, it's sometimes it could be tough. So definitely test. That's what testing is for. Use that minimum viable product. And when you run into legal troubles, because you've put out such a great product out there in the market that people are now trying to get a piece of your pie there, then you can contact Mario. So you have to tell me, where did you come up with this name? ESCO, right? Where did that name come from? What does the ESQ stand for?
So I've always been like in business, even in high school. Like me and one of my best friends, we started a printing company where we would print like flyers and posters for local businesses. And we were just a middleman. We just found a wholesaler. So I've always been in business. But in law school, me and one of my friends were thinking about coming up with this new idea of how to like hire attorneys and things like that. And I had purchased an domain ESCO, ESQGO. Back then HBO Go was hot, so that's how long ago it was. And and I remember talking to a different friend, and he's like, "What about like Esco?" And I checked the domain, and it was available. And ESQ is just short for Esquire, right? Like attorney. So Esquire Go or Esco. Because if you think about it, I thought it was so relevant because with e-commerce, you're always on the go. Things are always changing, right? So I thought it'd be unique and it would be appropriate for the brand that we're trying to build here at my law firm.
I love it. I always get
Yeah.
that question for amazing at home because people are like, this isn't, it's a cool name, but it's
Yeah.
weird. And it was the same thing. I owned a domain name and I just was like, I got too many Fiverr clients. So I was like, okay, I need to like build a website or something. I need to like automate this. And so I owned this domain name. I never expected it to be anything,
Turn
but
into
now,
this.
it's amazing at
Yeah. I love it.
home.
I love it. But if you think about it, that's usually how all successful businesses start, or maybe even all businesses, is usually at home, right? Even with my Amazon business, I started that in my dorm. Well, it wasn't really a dorm, it was like an apartment, but that's where I started,
That's
right?
where
In
the
San Diego.
inspiration, the ideas are
Yeah.
born.
Yeah, if you think about it, that's where you're most comfortable. So I like it. Amazing at home because that's where it all starts.
There you go. Well,
Yeah.
before we wrap it up today, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for telling us all these fun stories and giving us this interesting strategy. It was really enlightening to learn about how you're going after these foreign infringers in the US. Happy that my state of Texas can be helpful in that. They have some crazy laws here.
Yeah. I've
But
I've 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 heard and I'm aware of some.
yeah, I went and got my concealed carry permit and I was like,
Nice.
okay, do not ever go and knock on somebody's door around here that you don't know because
Yeah.
it's legal for them to shoot you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's crazy. So, Texas, gotta love it.
I
Texas
I
work
I
out.
like Texas. I like Texas. I'm from California, but I like Texas. We've talked about moving to Texas, me and my wife, several times.
It
Either
is
Florida
it.
or Texas. Yeah. And I think
It
a
is
lot of
the
people from
um
California
the
have.
mass exodus from California to Texas. That's happening. But I'm originally from Wisconsin, but I retired here in Texas. So good
Okay.
stuff. Well,
Yeah.
tell everybody, Mario, how they can use your services, get in contact with you. How do they find you and follow you online? All that fun stuff.
Yeah, so you could go to our website, esqgo.com. You could look us up on Facebook. We've got a Facebook page, or you could send us an email. My direct email is mario@esco.com, or you could send it to intake@esco.com. Either way, if you look, we're pretty easy to find.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Leave your questions definitely for us and we'll follow up on any of those and have a great rest of your week. And thank you so much again, Mario.